Hey everyone, this is Ruben, and in this presentation I'm going to show you the game I designed for this class. It's called Critical Hit, and I hope you enjoy the presentation and you decide to try it for yourself to see if it's a fun experience. Now the rules and instructions for the game are as follows. First of all, the game can be played by players 10 years or older, and it can be played by 2 or more players. The materials you need to play the game are a deck of 52 cards. These are regular suit and face cards. 3 D&D dice, a D6, a D10, and a D20. And this is optional. You can have a whiteboard or a notebook and pen to record each player's points and health points. Now, the main objective of the game is to deal the most amount of damage to your opponent over the duration of 5 rounds. This is how you win the game, by being the one that deals the most amount of damage from all the players. Now, to set up the game, the players must sit across one another or in a circle if there are more than 2 players. The deck of cards, now called the draw pile, is in the middle with the dice. Each player has to take turns to throw the dice, and the player with the highest number can start the game. From then, the players' turns and opponents rotate clockwise. So if I am the first player, my opponent will be the person on my right. Now, when the game starts, the first player must throw the dice and add the numbers. Let's say I pick up the dice, I throw them, and on the D6 I got a 2, on the D10 I got 10, and on the D20 I got 8. That is 20 in total. After I got my numbers on the dice, the player must pick 3 cards from the draw pile and add the value of the 3 cards. So I have to pick 3 cards from the draw pile and see how much value they add in order for me to pass the higher or lower principle. Now, what is the higher or lower principle, you may ask? Well, if the value of the cards is equal or higher than the number on the dice, then I can attack my opponent. But if the value of the cards is lower than the number on the dice, then I had to take the damage to myself. Now, this is the higher or lower principle, and it is the main rule of the game. This is how the game works. Now, in order for you to fully understand the higher or lower principle, you must understand the value of the cards. Now, the regular suit cards, the spades, the diamonds, each of these cards' value depends on the number in the card. This goes from 1 to 13. The queen's value is 15. Jack's value is 20, and the king's value is 25. The highest card you can get is the ace, which value is of 30. And there is one more card, and this card is very tricky. It's the joker. And the value of the joker is what the player needs to pass the higher or lower principle. Let's say, for example, I threw the dice and I got 20 points in the dice. I pick one of my cards and I got 1. I pick another card and I got 2. I only have 3. I need another 17 points in order for damage my opponent, or else I'm going to damage myself. So I pick another card and I get a joker. That joker gives me the rest of the 17 points I need to pass the higher or lower principle. Not only that, the joker also gives me the ability to bounce immediate damage back to my opponent. And I'll explain on this mechanic a little bit further in the presentation. Now, I know it sounds and seems like a lot, but these are rules that really need to be followed for the game to correctly work. First of all, players can use health points to cancel opponents' attacks. All players start the game with 5 health points. If a player runs out of health points, he can no longer use this quirk. So to explain this, all players start the game with 5 health points. Now I can use the health points to cancel my opponent's attacks. Let's say, for example, my opponent throws the dice says 30, my opponent picks the 3 cards, and he got 50 on the 3 cards. This passes the higher or lower principle, and he can inflict me 50 points of damage. Now I can say out loud that I want to sacrifice one of my 5 health points to cancel the attack. So instead of doing 50, my opponent now does 0, and I lose 1 life. Now, if I run out of lives, that doesn't mean that I lose the game. I just simply can no longer use this ability to cancel damage. Now, the player can lose health points without using them if his opponent adds 100 points of damage during the game. Now, for example, my opponent does 50 points of damage on his first turn and another 50 on his second turn. Now that adds up to 100 points of damage, and I immediately lose one of my lives without me consenting it. Now there are a few other alterations that happens when a player throws the dice, and I'm going to explain to you right now. Now, if a player gets a mirrored number on 2 dice, the total value of damage from his cards is doubled, but still has to follow the higher or lower principle. Now, what this means is that if for example, I take the dice and I throw them, and I got 2 number 10s, my damage is doubled. So on the dice, I got 22, and I take my 3 cards, and I have 30 points in the cards. Now, because I got 2 number 10s, my damage is double, and instead of doing 30, I can do 60 points of damage to my opponent. There's an even crazier alteration, and this is the triple bonus. If I get 3 equal numbers on all the dice, the total value of damage from my cards is tripled. Now, like before, if I threw the dice and I got 3 number 6, that is 18 points. I take my 3 cards and I got 20 points in the cards. Now, because I have the triple bonus, instead of doing 20 points, I do 60 points of damage. This is crazy because if you have, for example, if you get an ace and then you have a king and then you have a jack, that is over 75 points of damage, and triple, that is over 225 points of damage to your opponents. Now this is a lot of damage, and this is very fun because you are doing a lot of damage and you're winning. Now if a player gets a joker from the draw pile, it adds enough to fulfill the higher or lower principle. I explained this before. The joker's value is whatever you need to pass the higher or lower principle, even if that's 1, 2, 3, or over 30. It doesn't matter. And once you get the joker, you can save it for the whole game to use the mechanic to bounce back upon its damage to my opponent. A round's duration is 5 turns per player, and all players will have 25 turns in total. So, if 4 players are playing the game, all players will have 5 turns in one round. So at the end, yeah, all players have 5 turns in a round. Now I'm going to use this this graphic description to explain how the game works, and I hope you follow along with me. Now here are 2 players. On the left we have player 1, and on the right we have player 2. Both of them start the game with 5 lives, and the draw pile, the dice, are in the middle. Now the game starts. Player 1 got 27 on the dice. Now his cards must have at least 27 to deal damage to player 2. Now player 1 takes the dice. He throws them, and he got 27 on the dice. He picks up 3 cards, and his cards add up to 30. This passes the higher or lower principle, and he can do 30 points of damage to player, and player 1 can do 30 points of damage to player 2. Player 2 can do one of the following in response. Use one of his 5 health points to cancel the 30 points the player 1 is about to do to him, or he can use the joker to bounce damage back to player 1. Because he has it in his hand, so he can bounce damage back to player 1. So what this means is that, for example, player 1 does the 30 damage to player 2, Player 2 takes the Joker, and those 30 points of damage player 1 was about to do goes back to him. So player 2 ends up doing the 30 points of damage to player 1 instead of the other way around. Now it's turn of the player 2. Player 2 got 210 on the dice. Now his damage is double. His cards have over 23 points of damage. This passes the higher or lower principle because he got less than 23 on the dice, and the double bonus lets him do 46 points of damage to player 1. Now player 1 decides to use one of his 5 health points to cancel the damage he was about to get. And he has 4 health points for the rest of the game. Now it's a turn of player 1 again. Player 1 got 3 number 6 on the dice. This is now he has the triple bonus. And his cards adds over 75 points. Triple. This is over 225 points of damage. This is a lot of damage. Now player 2 decides to use a life to cancel the 25 points of damage. This is clever, and he did the right move, because if he didn't use one of his lives to cancel the damage, then he would have lost 2 health points, because the damage adds more than one, adds 100 points twice. So instead of losing 1, he would have lost 2 lives. But he just lost 1, and the player 1 did no damage on his turn. Now the game progresses, and each player has a turn to do damage to his opponent. And in the end, player 1 dealt a total of 450 damage to player 2, and player 2 dealt over 800 points of damage to player 1. Player 2 wins by dealing more damage to player 1 over the 5 rounds. Now there are some frequently asked questions you might have while playing the game, or really while watching this presentation. First of all, what do I do with my cards after the round ends? Well, when the round ends, you must discard all your cards, no matter the value. Let's say in round 1, I got a king, a jack, and a king, a jack, and a queen on my last turn. When the round ends and the round changes, I must throw all my cards away on the discard pile. Now, what do I do if I get a joker when I draw? Well, as I explained before, when you get a joker, it adds whatever is necessary for you to attack your opponent. But I didn't explain this. If you already have enough with 2 cards, joker's value turns to 0. So let's say, for example, I got 10 points in the dice. I pick 1 card and I have the joker. Great, I already have the 10 points. No. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase it real quick. I have 10 points in the dice. I pick 1 card and I have 5. I pick another card and I get another 5. I already have the 10 points to do damage. In my third card, I have the joker. Now the joker doesn't really add up to anything, because I already have enough to pass the higher or lower principle. The joker just works for me because I can use the bounce back option. And I can save it to cancel my opponent's damage during the whole game. Now, can I use one of my lives to cancel the damage I do to myself? Yeah, you can do it, but it'd be unwise. Remember, you only have 5 opportunities to cancel damage during the whole game. And you can even lose these opportunities as the game progresses without your consent. So you really have to think about whether or not it's effective to use one of your lives or not. Because if your opponent does 10 of damage to you, you can say, well, I want to use one of my health points and receive no damage at all. But wait, in his next turn, my opponent could get more than 10, even more than 100. I have to think carefully if I want to use one of my lives unwisely. Now, what happens when the draw pile runs empty? Well, if the draw pile runs empty, you must take all the previous discarded cards and shuffle them to get a new draw pile. Now, I understand that the game may get complicated at times, but I really think that if you review the high concept document, and if you read carefully to the instructions, and you leave feedback comments or questions to add to the game, we can shape this game into a more entertaining and fun experience that it already is. With that said, this concludes the presentation. I really hope you enjoyed watching all of this, understanding how the game works. Uh, and if you have questions and you have comments, you can leave them uh, on the discussion in the class. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a nice day.